Okay, now we're going to work on implementing our toArray methods. There's actually two of them here. The first one, let's do that. Let's worry about that first. It returns an array containing all the elements in this list in proper sequence. The returned array will be safe in that no references to it are maintained by this list. So it's always a new array is basically what that's saying, and we don't save a reference to it. So that the caller is free to modify the returned array. Okay, so that sounds like it should be pretty simple to implement, so let's go back and start implementing it. So basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to make an object array, and we want the length of that array to be the size of this list. So I'm just going to call our size method right there to say that this is a new object array of that size. And then what we're going to do is loop through everything in our list, and we're going to want to add each of these elements called E into our array. And so we're going to set an array at some index equal to E. Now what is that index? We're going to want to increment that index each time, so let's add a counter here to start at 0, since that'll be the first index in our array. And so we can say at array sub I we're going to set E, and then each time we'll increment I so that it goes up as we go through the array. And then we will return that array just like that. And that looks like it should be a good implementation of that toArray method. Now let's look at the other toArray method, which looks like it might be a little bit trickier. This time it returns an array of T, of type T, which is a placeholder for some type. It matches whatever type is passed into the parameter there. So it returns an array containing all of the elements in this list in proper sequence from first to last element. The runtime type of the returned array is that of the specified array. So that's basically saying whatever kind of array you pass in here, it's going to be the same type that gets returned by the function, by the method. If the list fits in the specified array, it is returned therein. So if the length of A here is big enough to fit the whole list, then we can put the elements right into that list. Otherwise, a new array is allocated with the runtime type of the specified array and the size of the list. Okay, so if it's not big enough, we're going to make a new array and put it in there. If the list fits in the specified array with room to spare, i.e. the array has more elements than the list, the element in the array immediately following the end of the list is set to null. Okay, so that means if A is larger than the size of our list, then the element after the end of our list in this array is going to be set to null. This is useful in determining if the length of the list, if the caller only knows that the list does not contain any null elements. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all the information we're going to need to start implementing this. So let's go back here. First thing we need to know is what array we're going to put it in. So we said if our size of our list, if that is greater than the length of this array that we get passed in, which to make this consistent, I'll call it A here so that it matches with our documentation. It's called A. So if the length of that, if the size of our list is bigger than the length of that array, then we're going to want to make a new array of type T. So let's actually just set A equal to a new array, and we want the size of that array to be size, just like that. Okay, so now that we have our array that we're going to be putting stuff in, either this new array that we allocated or just whatever A was, if it was already big enough to fit it. So we're going to loop through everything once again in our list, and we're going to do just like we did up here. We're going to have this counter int I equals 0, and then A sub I equals E. And now we're going to have a problem here. It says required type T but found type E. That's because this is type E, and this array is holds type T objects. So what we're going to do here is just cast it over, and whoever calls this method is going to have to make sure that they're being safe with what types they pass in here and what types this list has in it, so that we know this cast is actually valid. And then we're going to add that I++ here, and then at the end we're going to want to return A. But there's one last thing that we have to do, and that's the part about if the list fits in the specified array with room to spare, the element in the array immediately following the end of the list is set to null. So let's do that. So if after we've done this loop, I will be at the next element where we want to set it to null. So if that index actually exists in the array. So let's test if that index actually exists by doing a.length. If the length of the array is greater than, or actually is, let's see, if something there, then we're going to want to set a sub I equal to null. So we have to make sure that a sub I exists. So a sub I will exist if the length of the array, if the length of A is greater than I. It's not greater than or equal to, because the actual length is one past the last index in the array. So we're going to have to say if a.length is greater than I. If that's true, then we know that a sub I exists, and we can set it to null just like that. And at the end we're returning A, which is our new array. So that looks like we've got an implementation here for our toArray method. It looks like we've still got a problem here with our toArray method. We're making a new T, and actually we can't instantiate something of type T because we don't actually know what type T is. So what I'm going to do is switch this to actually use an object array called result, and I'm going to set that to A, just like that, and then I'm going to make this be result here, and that's going to be a new object array of that size. And right here I can switch this to result as well. And all through this method I'm going to switch these to use result. And then right at the end we're going to return result, and we'll see we're not returning the right type. So all I'm going to have to do to fix that is just cast this to a T array, just like that. And I can actually remove this cast right here, since E we know is now a object type, and we're putting it into an object array. So that should be good for our toArray methods.